You each will get a long rectangular sheet of canvas. This canvas has gesso on one side and on the other side it's unprimed. So you have to figure out which is the correct side to work on. The gesso side should be a little bit whiter. You should see more weave on the underside of the canvas. So you want to work on the gesso side. Once you have that figured out, then you're going to tape it into place onto a board. So I'm taping mine both on the top and on the bottom. Be sure to use the tape that's the blue tape, but without any logos or writing on it, just straight up blue tape. Both the top and the bottom should have blue tape on it to secure it into place. Next, you're going to go in and I'm going to give you something to trace. Yours is actually going to be 1 degree smaller, but I'll give you a clear plastic rectangle to trace 3 times to create 3 horizontal rectangles. Now you can always flip the board sideways so you can create like a vertical composition that way. Here's what the 3 rectangles should look like. We're going to go in a moment and start to tone them. I'm going to show you what acrylic tone looks like, but also how you can tone with oil before starting in on a painting. So here is our 2 colors that we're going to use to tone. We're using burnt sienna, which is a warm red, as you know, and we're mixing that with some white. It should make kind of a peachy color, which will be a nice neutral if we're painting landscape or if you decide to paint architecture. So we're going to go ahead and give these some tone. And remember, tone is done thinly with a little bit of water on your brush, but not too thin. You want it somewhere in between the consistency of gouache and watercolor. Not quite as loose as watercolor and not quite as thick as gouache can be. Remember, it is important that when you tone, you practice kind of making that gestural mark. So instead of going all one way with your stroke, you go all these random directions. So that can kind of help break up the space and it can avoid getting a distraction from a repetitive stroke pattern. Here's what it looks like when you tone with oil. So I have a oil brush and it's just burnt sienna, no white. You can loosen up the paint with a little bit of solvent, but you want to be careful that you don't put too much in because that can lead to problems down the road, like cracking and stuff like that. So you're scrubbing in the burnt sienna and you're basically trying to push the pigment into that kind of waffle or weave pattern of the canvas. If you got it too dark, like I feel like mine's a little bit too dark, then you can take a rag and you can wipe it out a little bit and it creates this really nice lighter tone. So here's what it looks like. The oil painting tone is on the top and the acrylic ones are on the bottom. I would just pick one medium and it should be the medium you've been working with. Next, we're going to go in and put a rule of thirds grid on these. I'm going to have you do that because I'm having you use a viewfinder with a rule of thirds on it. So to do the rule of thirds, I'm dividing up the space. So it's essentially 6 inches on that side. So that side divides easily. However, you can just guesstimate. On the other side, it's 4 inches, which doesn't divide so neatly. So I just kind of eyeballed it and put the rule of thirds grid on. I'm doing that with a pencil. However, on the oil painting one, I actually did that with paint. So I just took some more of the burnt sienna that was on my brush and I did the grid just like that.